Working with the 0 and 1 and. So we're going to be walking again. But this time we're going to be adding spins. And we're going to do something that most women get very familiar with rather quickly. That is to say, walking around an object. So I've placed an object right there. And we're going to be walking around that. And 0 and 1 and 0 and 1 and 0. Alright, we've done that walking forwards and walking backwards. Now we're going to have to add this new direction here. Sideways. Forwards is 1. Backwards is 3. And 2 is free leg sideways. We're going to see that it's a particular free leg sideways. Again, it's particular because it's very useful. Alright, let's start off on the right hand corner of this object, whatever it is. We're going on one axis. So here we are, we can prove to ourselves that we have an axis. We assume the big volume, right? Project our chests, back straight. 0. And without movement, still able to raise this thing. 0. And 1. And 0. 0 and 1 and 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 0 and 1. Whew. It's a good exercise. It's not that fast, right? What did we say? We said this was a little more than 70, it's about 80 beats per minute. And it certainly gets the legs there on time. Freeing up your free legs. Mark the ends. And assume the full strides when you're on the ones. 0 and 1. Those are full stride positions. And 0 and 1. Hope this helps. Zero and 1 and. At this point, we're going to do a spin counterclockwise, right? We can use, again, the big toe is no longer useful to us, but it's the big heel. It serves to turn us. 0 and 1. Do that again. 0 and 1. And 0 and 1. And 0. We can, while we're doing 0, 0 and 1. And. Keep that in mind. The foot that's leaving offers a bit of push. The second time you do this, think more now about this volume. 0 and 1 and 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 0 and 1. You'll notice when you walk backwards that to actually go further, two things have to happen. walk backwards to go further, you're going to lean forward. That's inevitable. You cannot, let's just look at it from the point of view of this guy. If he is already leaning backward, his step can only be so far along the ground. If you are already leaning backward, you only have so much flexion backwards, and on top of that, mechanically the pendulum of your leg is going to hit the ground, your step is going to be shorter. Now, ultimately, the straighter it is, the further you're going to go. But let's not lie to ourselves here, let's be honest, I'm slightly leaning forward to get even further back. Now, there's a difference between this and this, right? This slightness is then adjusted on the 1. So there's this 0 and 1. 0 and 1. You can now see what I'm talking about. We'll see why that's very interesting also when there's a man put in front of you, ladies. Second thing that is really interesting about walking backwards, not just the leaning, it's the heel. To go further back, if you are here and I'm asking you to take a step back over a creek, say there's a creek there directly behind your heel, you're not going to take off on your toe, because then you're going to land in the creek. Blooksh. You're going to take off, you're going to assume a posture of, and you're going to take off with your heel. That is how you go further. There's more power. How is the power generated? Well, first of all, I am not deciding to walk backwards here. I've decided already here. I am ahead of my knee. My knee is ahead of my foot that I've already decided there's going to be some boost to this thing. So already I'm... There we go. So I'm a Lego man. Yes, right there. We are all Lego men. And notice, he's smiling. And his foot is up in the air. There's a correlation, I'm telling you. Other leg. 0 and 1. I'm leaving off of my heel. 1. The part where the front of my foot comes off is after the 1. So 0 and 1. I'm on my heel, but I can kind of sneak it around. 0 and 1. And. So the and is begun with that boop. 0 and 1 and. So to get a good and, a good crisp and, drive that heel into the ground. And. You're not looking. Of course you're not looking. Don't worry about your foot being flat on the ground and it looking, looking bad is not an issue here. Looking bad is not an issue here. Because it doesn't look bad, and the word bad means something real, not something intrinsic. Now my head's cut off. 0 and 1. Let's do it this way. 0 and, no, and 0, and 1, and 0, and 1, and 0, and 1, straight, and 0, and 1, and 0. It's on the 0 that you're going to actually push there. And 1, and 0, and 1, and 0. It's on the 0 here that you're turning this whole thing. 0, and 1, and 0, and 1. 1 is on both legs stable. 1, and 0, and 1, and 0, and 1, and 0, and 1, and 0, and 1, and 0. So, walking backwards, more difficult. Walking counterclockwise. Walking counterclockwise. We're going to do a counterclockwise spin. And walking clockwise, we're going to do a clockwise spin. Thank you.